eventually abused them.
Good afternoon. This is Radio Gateshead broadcasting from the studios at the Queen Elizabeth.
The launch of Gateshead Hospital Radio, pioneered by Peter Hetherington. This is how thousands of Peter's friends and fans know him, a tireless campaigner for needy causes.
We entertain the patients, we inform the patients about what's going on in their particular area. Yes, it has a proven therapeutic value, and this has been stated by many eminent consultants.
It's good fun as well, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes.
But behind the smile of the high-profile presenter lay a darker persona. For decades, the larger-than-life character has kept hidden his deepest secret. He even used his well-publicised work for an animal charity as a front. Behind closed doors of his PDSA office in Newcastle and here in Sunderland, he would blindfold his young victims, bind their hands and feet, and systematically molest them. Out of the 13 charges, Mr. Hetherington was found guilty of 5, not guilty of 4, and the jury's still deciding on the remaining 4 allegations. The earliest guilty charge relates to an assault in the 60s when he worked with the Scouts. 20 years later, he committed gross indecency with a child. The pattern continued over the years. And towards the end of the 80s, he was still abusing one of his victims. By that time, he'd set up Operation Acorn, a charitable organisation similar to the Scouts, to raise money for charity and help the local community. But the organisation also proved easy pickings for him. He even chose his family home to abuse one young boy. On some occasions, his wife and son were in the house at the time, unaware of what was going on. As a well-known presenter at Great North Radio, his young victims couldn't fail to become attracted by his celebrity status. They helped him with his Memories programme, one of the most listened-to request shows in the region. But now Peter Hetherington's double life has finally been exposed, a shock not only to his fans but also his wife Mary, who stood by him throughout. Like his victims who've learned to live with their childhood memories, Peter Hetherington has to learn to live with his conscience. That report.
Good evening. North East radio presenter Peter Hetherington is starting a 5-year jail sentence tonight after being convicted of sexually abusing young boys. Yesterday he was cleared of 4 similar offences. The offences of which Hetherington was convicted spanned 3 decades, and Newcastle Crown Court heard how he tied up and blindfolded his victims before he molested them. The judge told Hetherington he was guilty of exploiting young boys on a substantial scale. Philippa Young has been in court.
Hetherington portrayed himself as a family man who was sickened by the allegations. Seen here with his wife earlier this week, he continued to deny all 13 charges. But the court heard he had a darker side. He abused young boys over a 30-year period, tying up his victims and blindfolding them before he sexually abused them. Jailing Hetherington for 5 years, the judge told him, "It's sad to see someone of your reputation and service to the community standing in the dock convicted of charges like these. You haven't shown any remorse," he said. This was exploitation of young boys on quite a substantial scale.
I'm a little surprised at the length of the sentence the judge gave Mr. Hetherington. I would describe him as a devious man who's used his position of trust, power and influence to commit some of the most sinister and disgraceful acts you could imagine against what could only be described as very young and vulnerable boys.
Much of the abuse of 3 of the 4 boys happened at the former People's Dispensary for Sick Animals in Newcastle. Hetherington recruited vulnerable youngsters to help with charity work. He abused a 4th boy as long ago as 1967. He told his victim, now in his 40s, he was being punished for stealing sweets.
To go through the ordeal they've been through, not just the commission of the offences against them, but to have to relive that in court in front of strange people, and then to be put through what can only be described as a torrid time through cross-examination, I think they've performed marvellously well.
One of Hetherington's victims, now in his 20s, says he'll never forget what happened.
I feel as if I've had no teenage years at all. From being at school, I lost all my friends because I was with Peter all the time. and I wasn't in situations where I could make new friends, and Peter pretty much kept me away from everybody except his circle of friends, so the only people I came to know.
Hetherington made his name presenting programmes on Great North Radio. Tonight, his former employers said they were shocked and dismayed at what had happened. Hetherington's wife Mary was escorted out of the court by friends. As her husband was sentenced, they looked at each other before Hetherington closed his eyes and bowed his head.
I've got the rest of my life to live, so hopefully with it over and dealt with, I can start and move on and get on to new things and put this behind me, and it'll always be there, and I'll never forget it.
Hetherington was found guilty of 7 charges of abusing 4 young boys. 2 similar charges will stay on file. Philippa Young, North East Tonight, Newcastle Crown Court.